Zarkoth stood in his private chamber aboard the trading station, looking at the holographic display floating before him. The contract details glowed in soft blue light. His 3 eyes scanned the information with practiced efficiency. The target was a human named Jake Morrison, a commander stationed on a frontier colony called New Austin. The payment offered was 3 times his usual fee. In his 40 years as an assassin, Zarkoth had never failed a contract. He had killed warlords who commanded armies. He had eliminated crime bosses, protected by hundreds of guards. He had even assassinated a planetary governor who lived in a fortress. All of them were dead now, and Zarkoth was still alive. That was what mattered in his profession. He pulled up information about humans. They were a young species in the galactic community. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. Before that, they were trapped on their single planet, unaware that thousands of other civilizations existed among the stars. Now, they had spread to a dozen colonies, small settlements on the edge of known space. Zarkoth studied human biology. They were soft creatures with no natural armor. Their skin was thin and easily damaged. They had no claws, no venoms, no thick shells to protect them. They were weak compared to most species he knew. A Draxian could crush a human with one hand. A Kethrian could tear a human apart with their mandibles. Even his own species, the Velkari, were faster and stronger than humans. The data showed that humans came from a planet they called Earth. It was a moderate gravity world with a standard atmosphere. Nothing remarkable. Nothing dangerous. Zarkoth had killed targets from high-gravity worlds where every movement required tremendous strength. Humans seemed almost fragile in comparison. He was about to accept the contract when his communication system chimed. An encrypted message appeared on his screen. Zarkoth frowned. Very few people knew how to reach him through secure channels. He opened the message. The text was brief and direct. Abort the contract. You don't understand what you're hunting. Flee while you can. Zarkoth's primary mouth curved into what passed for a smile among his kind. Humans were trying to scare him. It was a primitive tactic, one he had seen before from desperate targets. He deleted the message without a second thought. Fear was a tool he used, not something he felt. He accepted the contract. The payment transferred to his secure accounts immediately. Half now, half upon confirmation of death. Standard terms. Zarkoth began preparing for his journey to New Austin. Meanwhile, on the colony of New Austin, Commander Jake Morrison sat in his office reviewing supply reports. The colony was young, only 5 years old, but it was growing fast. 2,000 people now called this place home. They mined valuable minerals from the nearby asteroid belt and grew food in massive underground gardens. It was hard work, but the colonists were determined to make it succeed. Jake was a tall man with short brown hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. He had fought in the First Contact Wars, back when humanity first met other species and learned that the galaxy was not a friendly place. He had scars on his arms and chest, reminders of battles he had survived. Now he was 38 years old, and he preferred the quiet work of managing a colony to the chaos of war. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Kate Stevens, entered the office. She was a sharp woman, with red hair tied back in a practical bun. She carried a datapad, and her expression was serious. "Commander, we've intercepted some concerning communications," Kate said, placing the datapad on his desk. "Someone has been asking questions about you. Your routines, your security protocols, where you live." Jake picked up the datapad and read through the report. It was not the first time someone had threatened him. During his military service, he had made enemies. Pirates he had stopped, criminals he had arrested. Rival corporations that wanted New Austin's mining rights. The list was long. "What do you think?" Jake asked. "I think someone wants you dead," Kate said bluntly. "I recommend increased security. We should assign guards to your quarters and vary your daily routes. Jake shook his head. We don't have the personnel for that. Everyone has jobs to do. I won't pull people away from essential work because someone made threats. Kate's jaw tightened. She had served with Jake for 6 years and knew he was stubborn. Sir, if there's a credible threat, we need to take it seriously. I am taking it seriously, Jake replied. But I won't hide. If someone wants to come after me, let them come. I've dealt with worse. Kate wanted to argue, but she knew it was pointless. Instead, she said, at least let me inform Ben and Amy. They should know to watch for anything unusual. Jake nodded. Fine. Tell Sergeant Cooper and Corporal Walsh to keep their eyes open. But no panic. No disruption to colony operations. After Kate left, Jake stood and walked to his window. He looked out at the colony, at the buildings and domes that protected his people from the harsh environment. He had fought to keep humans safe during the war. He would do the same now. Across the stars, Zarkoth boarded a transport ship heading toward New Austin. He traveled under a false identity, posing as a merchant from the Quellian Consortium. His weapons were hidden in sealed containers marked as trade goods. His credentials were perfect forgeries. During the journey, he reviewed everything he knew about Jake Morrison. The human had military experience, but that did not concern Zarkoth. Soldiers died, just like everyone else. The key was finding the right moment, the right method. Zarkoth had killed soldiers before. He had killed bodyguards and mercenaries and trained warriors. One human commander would be no different. The transport ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel near New Austin. Zarkoth looked at the colony through the viewport. It was a small settlement, vulnerable and isolated, perfect for his work. He would observe Morrison for a few days, learn his patterns, and then strike. Quick and clean. The human would never know what hit him. Zarkoth felt confident. He had never failed before. And he would not fail now. Humans were just another species. Just another target. In a few days, Jake Morrison would be dead, and Zarkoth would be richer. He had no idea how wrong he was. Zarkoth arrived at New Austin 3 days later. The colony's security was basic, designed to keep out wildlife and check for contraband, not to stop a professional assassin. He passed through the entry checkpoint without any problems. His fake credentials identified him as a trader interested in purchasing minerals. The security officer barely looked at him before waving him through. The colony was smaller than Zarkoth expected. The main settlement consisted of about 50 buildings, most of them functional structures with no decoration. Everything here served a purpose. There were living quarters, storage facilities, a small medical center, and a central command building. The streets were clean, but plain. The people moved with purpose, always going somewhere, always working. Zarkoth rented a small room in the visitors section and began his surveillance. He watched Jake Morrison from a distance, noting the human's daily patterns. Every morning at 7 o'clock, Jake left his apartment and walked to a small cafe. He always ordered the same thing: coffee and toast. He sat alone, reading reports on a datapad while he ate. After breakfast, Jake walked to the command center. The path was direct, about 500 meters through open streets. He did not have guards. He did not vary his route. He walked the same way every single day. It was almost too easy. Zarkoth observed the human commander for 3 days. Jake worked long hours, often staying in his office until late at night. In the evenings, he sometimes visited the colony's small recreation center, where he played cards with other colonists. He laughed and joked with them. He seemed relaxed and unaware of any danger. But Zarkoth began noticing strange things about the humans. They moved differently than other species he had observed. Their eyes constantly scanned their surroundings. When someone entered a room, every human's head turned to look, to identify, to assess. One afternoon, Zarkoth watched a mining accident occur near the edge of the settlement. A support beam collapsed in one of the tunnels, trapping 3 workers inside. Alarms sounded throughout the colony. Within minutes, human rescue teams were running toward the site. Zarkoth followed at a distance, curious. The tunnel entrance was filled with dust and smoke. Toxic fumes were leaking from broken equipment. The rescue team did not hesitate. They ran straight into the dangerous environment, wearing only basic protective masks. Zarkoth's sensors detected lethal levels of chemical compounds in the air. Those humans should have waited for proper containment suits, but they did not wait. They went in immediately, and 10 minutes later they emerged carrying the trapped workers. All 3 victims were alive. The rescuers were coughing and struggling to breathe, but they had saved their people. Medical teams rushed the injured to the clinic, while the rescuers sat down, recovering from the toxic exposure. Zarkoth was puzzled. Why would they risk their lives like that? The logical approach would have been to wait for proper equipment, even if it meant the trapped workers might die. Sacrificing rescuers to save victims made no tactical sense. That evening, Zarkoth received another message. This one came from a Draxian information broker he had worked with before. The Draxian's name was Krell, and he was reliable. Krell never sent messages unless they were important. The message read, "Zarkoth, I'm sending this as a courtesy. Humans are not what they seem. Every species that has underestimated them is either dead or allied with them. The contract is a setup. Leave now." Zarkoth stared at the message. Krell was not the type to panic. He was a professional who had survived in the information business for decades. If Krell was warning him, there might be a real reason. But Zarkoth had studied the humans. He had watched them. They were soft and weak. They had no natural weapons, no superior strength, no advanced technology that other species did not also possess. What could possibly make them dangerous? He deleted Krell's message and continued his planning. He had decided on his method: an explosive device planted in Jake Morrison's apartment. It would detonate during the human's sleep cycle. The explosion would look like an accident, perhaps a malfunction in the building's power systems. Zarkoth would be off the planet before anyone realized it was murder. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison sat in a meeting with Kate Stevens, Sergeant Ben Cooper, and Corporal Amy Walsh. Ben was a stocky man with dark skin and clever hands. He had been an engineer before joining the military and could fix almost anything. Amy was young, only 25. But she had sharp eyes and better instincts than soldiers twice her age. "The stranger who arrived 3 days ago," Kate said. "The one claiming to be a mineral trader. He hasn't made any business contacts. He hasn't visited any of the mining operations. All he does is watch and wait." Ben pulled up surveillance footage on the office display. "I've been tracking his movements. He spends a lot of time in positions where he can observe your routes, Commander. Coffee shop across from the cafe you visit. Window overlooking the path to command. He's conducting surveillance." Amy leaned forward. "His credentials check out on the surface, but something feels wrong. The way he moves, the way he watches people. He's not a traitor." Jake studied the footage. The alien was tall and thin, with gray skin and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on his face. Velkari species. If Jake remembered his xenobiology correctly, Velkari were known for their speed and precision. "They made excellent assassins. How sure are we?" Jake asked. 80%, Kate said. "I want to bring him in for questioning." Jake shook his head. "Not yet. If he is an assassin, bringing him in might trigger whatever plan he has. If he's innocent, we create a diplomatic incident. Keep watching him. Record everything." "Ben, can you track his communications?" "Already on it," Ben replied. "If he sends any messages off-world, we'll know." Amy stood. "I can follow him. He won't know I'm there." "Do it," Jake said. "But stay at a distance. If he is what we think he is, he's dangerous. After the meeting ended and the others left, Kate remained behind. Jake, you should consider protective custody until we know what we're dealing with. Jake smiled. Kate, I've been shot at by people far more dangerous than one assassin. I survived the Battle of Proxima Station. I survived the siege of New Harmony. I'm not going to hide in a bunker because some alien might want me dead. That's not bravery. That's stubbornness, Kate said. Maybe, Jake agreed. But it's kept me alive so far. That night, Zarkoth prepared his explosive device. It was small, sophisticated, and powerful enough to destroy Jake Morrison's apartment completely. He would plant it tomorrow and set the timer for the following night. By the time it detonated, Zarkoth would be halfway to the next star system. He felt confident. Humans were just another species, and Jake Morrison was just another target. In 2 days, the contract would be complete. Zarkoth moved through the colony's maintenance tunnels late at night. The humans had basic security cameras, but they were easy to avoid. He had studied the footage patterns and knew exactly where the blind spots were. His training allowed him to move silently, even in the echoing metal corridors. He reached the residential section where Jake Morrison lived. The commander's apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building that housed 20 families. Zarkoth felt a moment of hesitation. The explosion would likely kill some of the neighbors. Collateral damage was sometimes unavoidable in his profession, but he usually preferred cleaner methods. Still, the contract price was too good to refuse. He pushed the thought aside and focused on his work. He entered the building through a maintenance access point and climbed the internal ladder to the 3rd floor. The corridor was empty and quiet. Most colonists were already asleep. Jake Morrison's door had a simple lock. Zarkoth bypassed it in less than 30 seconds. He slipped inside the dark apartment and closed the door behind him. The living space was small and plain. A couch, a table, a few personal items. Nothing fancy. Humans seemed to prefer function over comfort. Zarkoth planted the explosive device behind the main power panel in the wall. It was perfectly positioned. When it detonated, it would look like an electrical fire that spread too quickly. The investigation would conclude it was a tragic accident caused by faulty wiring. He set the timer for 26 hours and activated the device. The small display showed a countdown beginning. He left the apartment the same way he had entered, retracing his steps through the maintenance tunnels. Within an hour, he was back in his rented room. Tomorrow, he would board a transport ship. The day after, while he was safely in faster-than-light travel, Jake Morrison would die. Zarkoth allowed himself to relax. Another successful contract. Another perfect kill. He had maintained his reputation as the galaxy's best assassin. The next day passed slowly. Zarkoth packed his belongings and checked the departure schedules. There was a transport leaving for the trading station in 18 hours, well before the bomb would detonate. He purchased a ticket under his false identity. That evening, Jake Morrison returned to his apartment after a long day of work. He was tired. There had been a problem with one of the mining operations, and it had taken hours to resolve. All he wanted was a hot meal and sleep. He opened his door and stepped inside. Something felt wrong. Jake had developed good instincts during the war, and those instincts were screaming at him now. The air smelled different. Someone had been in his apartment. He stood very still, scanning the room. Nothing looked disturbed. Nothing was missing. But someone had definitely been here. Jake pulled out his communicator and called Ben Cooper. Ben, I need you to sweep my apartment for devices. I think someone's been inside. On my way, Ben replied immediately. While waiting, Jake did not touch anything. He stood near the door, watching and listening. 15 minutes later, Ben arrived with electronic scanning equipment. He moved through the apartment methodically, checking every surface, every corner. Got something, Ben said, kneeling by the wall panel. There's a device behind here. Power signature suggests it's an explosive. Looks like it's on a timer. How long? Jake asked calmly. Ben carefully removed the wall panel, revealing the device. His face went pale. Commander, this thing is set to go off in 40 minutes. We need to evacuate the building right now. Jake immediately activated the building's alarm system. Everyone out! This is not a drill. Evacuate immediately. People poured out of their apartments, confused and frightened. Jake and Ben helped organize the evacuation, making sure every family got out safely. Amy Walsh arrived to assist, guiding people to a safe distance from the building. Ben stayed behind with Jake, working on the bomb. I can't disarm it, Ben said, sweat dripping down his face. It has anti-tampering mechanisms. If I try to disable it, it'll detonate immediately. Then we move it, Jake said. Sir, that's insane. Any movement might trigger it. Jake carefully lifted the device out of the wall. It was surprisingly light, no bigger than his fist. The timer showed 32 minutes remaining. Get everyone at least 200 meters away. I'm taking this to the waste disposal area. Commander, you can't. That's an order, Sergeant. Ben hesitated, then nodded and ran outside. Jake carried the bomb carefully, walking slowly through the empty building. Every step was deliberate. Every movement was controlled. He could feel his heart pounding, but his hands were steady. He made it outside and walked toward the colony's waste disposal area, a reinforced bunker at the edge of the settlement. The distance was 300 meters. The timer showed 28 minutes. Jake walked calmly, not rushing, not jostling the device. People watched from a distance. Kate wanted to run to him, to help, but she knew any distraction could be fatal. She ordered everyone to stay back. Jake reached the disposal bunker and placed the bomb inside the reinforced chamber. He sealed the door and walked away. The timer showed 3 minutes remaining. He had just reached a safe distance when the bomb detonated. The explosion was massive, even contained within the bunker. The blast shook the ground. Windows shattered in nearby buildings, but the bunker held. The reinforced walls contained most of the force. Jake stood there, breathing heavily. His hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally catching up with him. Kate ran to him. Are you insane? She shouted. Probably, Jake admitted. Across the colony, in his rented room, Zarkoth watched the explosion through his window. He saw the flash of light, heard the distant boom, but it came from the wrong location. The bomb should have detonated inside the residential building, not at the edge of the colony. He pulled up news feeds from the colony's network. The reports said that Commander Morrison had discovered the device and moved it to safety. All residents were unharmed. Jake Morrison was alive. Zarkoth felt something he had not experienced in years. Fear. How had the human known? How had he survived? The bomb should have killed him in his sleep. Instead, Morrison had found it, moved it, and saved everyone in the building. For the first time in his career, Zarkoth had failed to kill his target. Worse, the human now knew someone was trying to assassinate him. The element of surprise was gone. Zarkoth's communicator chimed. Another message appeared. This one, with an attached data file. He opened it hesitantly. The file contained footage from the First Contact Wars. Zarkoth watched human soldiers fighting against overwhelming odds. He saw humans continue fighting with terrible injuries, wounds that should have killed them. He saw human ships ramming enemy vessels after all their weapons failed. He saw human civilians building weapons from scrap metal and fighting trained soldiers to a standstill. The message read, "This is your final warning. The galaxy learned a hard lesson about humans. You're about to learn it alone. Flee, while you still can." Zarkoth stared at the footage. He finally understood why everyone had warned him. Humans were not dangerous because they were strong or fast. They were dangerous because they refused to die. They refused to quit. They refused to surrender. He had made a terrible mistake accepting this contract. But it was too late to run now. Jake Morrison knew someone was hunting him. And humans did not forget threats. Zarkoth was trapped on this colony with a target who would not die. The hunter had become the hunted. The colony went on high alert. Kate Stevens coordinated security teams, while Ben Cooper analyzed the bomb fragments. Amy Walsh reviewed all surveillance footage from the past week. Everyone was looking for the assassin. Zarkoth knew he should leave. The smart move would be to abort the contract, flee the colony, and disappear. But leaving meant admitting failure. It meant refunding the payment and damaging his reputation. In his profession, reputation was everything. One failure could destroy a career built over decades. He decided to try again. But this time, he would use a different method. Bombs were too obvious now. The humans would be watching for explosives. But poison was subtle. Poison could look like natural illness or food contamination. Nobody would suspect murder. Zarkoth had access to a Velkari neurotoxin, a substance lethal to 90% of known species. It was colorless, tasteless, and worked within minutes. A single drop in food or drink would be enough. The victim would collapse, their nervous system shutting down. The challenge was delivery. Jake Morrison would be cautious now. He would not accept food or drink from strangers. But the colony had a central cafeteria where all command staff ate lunch. Zarkoth studied the facility carefully. The kitchen staff prepared meals in bulk. Security was minimal, because nobody expected an attack from inside the food supply. Late at night, Zarkoth broke into the cafeteria. The locks were simple, designed to keep out curious children, not trained assassins. He found the cold storage where tomorrow's ingredients were kept. He located the container of coffee that would be served to command staff and added 3 drops of neurotoxin to it. Just a few drops mixed into liters of coffee, undetectable until it was too late. He left as quietly as he had arrived, confident that tomorrow Jake Morrison would drink his morning coffee and never wake up. The next morning, Jake attended a briefing with his senior staff. Kate, Ben, and Amy were all present, along with several other officers. They were discussing the bomb incident and planning increased security measures. Coffee was served from a large pot at the center of the table. Jake poured himself a cup and took a drink. The coffee tasted normal. He continued discussing security protocols while sipping his drink. 10 minutes into the meeting, he started feeling strange. His vision blurred slightly. His hands began to tingle. Jake set down his cup and focused on the sensation. Something was wrong with his body. The tingling spread up his arms. His breathing became difficult. He recognized the symptoms from his military training in xenobiology. This was not natural illness. This was poison. Medical emergency, Jake said calmly, even as his heart rate skyrocketed. I've been poisoned. Neurotoxin, probably Velkari, based on the symptoms. Kate, lock down the cafeteria. Ben, find out who had access to the coffee. Amy, get Dr. Palmer here now. Kate immediately activated her communicator, calling for security teams. Ben ran toward the cafeteria. Amy helped Jake stay upright as his legs began to shake. Dr. Greg Palmer arrived within minutes, carrying his medical kit. He was a skilled physician who had treated everything from mining injuries to alien diseases. He took one look at Jake's symptoms and pulled out a scanning device. Your nervous system is under attack, Greg said. Heart rate is dangerously high. Neural patterns are erratic. What kind of poison? Are erratic. Velkari neurotoxin, Jake said, fighting to keep his voice steady. There should be a counteragent in the xenobiology database. Code V. N. 7. 3. Greg pulled up the information on his datapad. The counteragent requires 3 separate compounds mixed in precise ratios. This will take time to prepare. Then work fast, Jake said. His vision was darkening at the edges. The poison was spreading through his bloodstream. Most species would already be dead. Jake's human metabolism was fighting the toxin his immune system responding to the foreign substance, but it was a losing battle. Greg administered a general antitoxin to slow the poison's spread, then rushed to the medical center to prepare the specific counteragent. Jake remained in the command center, refusing to lie down. He continued giving orders even as his body struggled to function. "The assassin used poison this time," Jake said to Kate. "That means he's desperate. He knows we're looking for him, so he's taking bigger risks. Ben will track down how the poison got into the coffee. Once we know that, we'll know who our assassin is." Kate wanted to tell him to rest, to save his strength, but she knew it would be pointless. Jake was stubborn. Even poisoned and dying, he would not stop working. Ben returned 20 minutes later with critical information. "Commander, I checked the cafeteria security footage. The locks were bypassed last night at 2:15 in the morning. The intruder was careful, but I caught a glimpse on one camera. Velkari species, tall and thin, matches the description of our suspicious traitor." "Name?" Kate demanded. "His fake credentials say he's a merchant named Quaval. But I did some deeper checking. That identity was created 3 weeks ago. Before that, it didn't exist. I think we're looking at a professional assassin." Amy entered the room with more news. "His ship has been locked down. I had maintenance run a diagnostic on all vessels in the docking bay. His ship's launch systems mysteriously malfunctioned. It won't be leaving anytime soon." Jake managed a weak smile. "Good work. So our assassin is trapped here with us. Kate, I want teams searching for him. Amy, you're our best tracker. Find him." "Sir, you need to focus on staying alive," Kate said. "I can do both," Jake replied. Then his legs gave out. He collapsed into a chair, his body finally succumbing to the poison's effects. Greg returned with the counteragent. "This is going to hurt," he warned, then injected the compound directly into Jake's bloodstream. The pain was immediate and intense. Jake's entire nervous system felt like it was on fire. The counteragent was fighting the poison, forcing it out of his system. But the process was excruciating. Jake gripped the chair's armrests so hard the metal bent under his fingers. He did not scream. He barely made a sound. He just endured. After 5 minutes that felt like hours, the pain began to subside. Jake's vision cleared. His breathing steadied. The counteragent had worked. "You should be dead," Greg said quietly. "That amount of neurotoxin would kill a Draxian in seconds. I've never seen anyone survive that long without treatment." "Human stubbornness," Jake said with a tired grin. "We're too stubborn to die." Meanwhile, Zarkoth had watched the command center from a distance. He had seen the medical emergency, the doctor rushing in, the security teams mobilizing. He waited for news of Jake Morrison's death, but an hour later, reports came through the colony's network. The commander had survived. He was poisoned, but alive. Already back on duty, Zarkoth felt panic rising in his chest. How was this possible? The neurotoxin should have killed Morrison in minutes. No species could survive that poison once it entered their bloodstream, yet the human was alive, functional, and now actively hunting his attacker. Zarkoth tried to access his ship, planning to override the launch malfunction and flee. But when he reached the docking bay, he found security teams guarding all vessels. His ship was locked down, and he had no way to escape. He ran back to his rented room, grabbed his weapons, and prepared to fight his way off the colony. But as he opened his door, he saw human security teams moving through the visitors section, checking every room, every corridor. They were hunting him systematically, coordinating their search with military precision. Zarkoth fled into the maintenance tunnels. For the first time in his career, he was the one being hunted. And his hunters were humans who refused to die, refused to quit, and refused to let him escape. The hunt for Zarkoth began in earnest. Kate Stevens organized the security teams into coordinated units. She had experience tracking insurgents during the war, and she applied those same tactics now. The colony was not large. There were only so many places to hide. Ben Cooper used his engineering knowledge to track energy signatures through the colony's systems. Every time Zarkoth used a door lock or accessed a computer terminal, Ben detected it. He created a map showing the assassin's movements through the maintenance tunnels. Amy Walsh did what she did best. She tracked physical evidence. She found scuff marks on tunnel floors, displaced dust, broken sensor wires. Each tiny clue told her where Zarkoth had been and where he was going. She moved through the tunnels like a ghost, following a trail that most people would never see. Zarkoth had never experienced anything like this. He was faster than individual humans, stronger in direct combat, and his technology was superior. But the humans did not fight him individually. They worked as teams, communicating constantly, adapting their tactics every time he evaded them. He tried to rest in an abandoned storage room, but within an hour a search team was approaching. He fled deeper into the tunnels. He tried to hack into the colony's systems to create a distraction. But Ben detected his access attempt and traced his location. Security teams converged on his position within minutes. Zarkoth realized something terrifying. The humans never stopped. When one team grew tired, a fresh team replaced them. They hunted in rotating shifts, always keeping pressure on him. He had been running for 36 hours straight. He was exhausted, hungry, and desperate. The humans seemed tireless. He tried to double back toward the docking bay, hoping to steal a ship or force his way onto a transport. But Amy had predicted that move. She had security teams waiting at every access point. When Zarkoth emerged from a tunnel near the docking bay, he found 6 armed humans blocking his path. He ran in a different direction, using his superior speed to escape. But the humans did not chase him blindly. They communicated his position to other teams, herding him away from escape routes, forcing him deeper into the colony's lower levels. Jake Morrison coordinated the hunt from the command center, still recovering from the poison. His hands shook slightly, an after effect of the neurotoxin, but his mind was clear. He studied the tactical display showing Zarkoth's movements. "He's running out of options," Jake said to Kate. "Amy has him moving toward the old mining tunnels. That section is partially sealed. If we position teams at the main exits, we can trap him." Kate issued orders to her teams. They moved into position, creating a perimeter around the old mining section. Amy continued tracking Zarkoth, staying just far enough behind to avoid direct confrontation while keeping him moving in the desired direction. Zarkoth finally realized he was being herded. The humans were not just chasing him. They were guiding him into a trap. He tried to break through their perimeter, but every route he chose was blocked. Frustrated and exhausted, he made a desperate decision. He would ambush Jake Morrison directly. If he could kill the human commander, the contract would be complete. He could use Morrison's death to negotiate his escape. He accessed the colony's internal sensors and located Jake's position. The commander was in a storage bay near the command center, checking equipment inventories. He was alone. Zarkoth saw his opportunity. He made his way through service corridors toward the storage bay, moving as quickly as his exhausted body would allow. He had one weapon left, a plasma pistol, with 3 shots remaining. It would be enough. He would kill Morrison at close range and then disappear into the tunnels again before security teams arrived. Zarkoth entered the storage bay silently. Jake Morrison stood with his back turned, examining supply containers. The human seemed unaware of the danger. Zarkoth raised his weapon. "You should have listened to the warnings," Zarkoth said. Jake turned slowly. He did not look surprised. He did not look afraid. He looked tired and annoyed. "I knew you'd come. You're predictable." Zarkoth fired his plasma pistol. The shot hit Jake in the shoulder, burning through flesh and muscle. The human staggered, but did not fall. Zarkoth fired again, hitting Jake in the leg. Still, the human stayed upright. "You're supposed to die," Zarkoth said, his voice rising with panic. "Yeah, people keep telling me that. Jake replied. He grabbed a metal pipe from a nearby rack. Zarkoth fired his final shot. It hit Jake in the chest, a kill shot that should have stopped his heart. Jake fell to one knee, smoke rising from the wound. But then he stood back up, gripping the pipe like a weapon. How? Zarkoth whispered. Jake did not answer. He charged forward, moving faster than Zarkoth expected. The assassin tried to dodge, but exhaustion had slowed his reflexes. Jake's pipe caught him across the arm, breaking bone. Zarkoth dropped his empty weapon. They fought hand to hand. Zarkoth was stronger and faster, even exhausted. But Jake fought with a ferocity that transcended physical strength. He used everything around him as a weapon: pipes, containers, his own body. He took hits that should have disabled him and kept coming. Zarkoth landed a powerful strike to Jake's head. The human went down, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. Zarkoth prepared to finish him, but Jake swept his legs out from under him, sending the assassin crashing to the floor. They grappled on the ground, both wounded, both desperate. Zarkoth tried to reach Jake's throat. Jake broke two of Zarkoth's fingers. The assassin screamed in pain. Jake used that moment to land a devastating punch to Zarkoth's head. The alien's vision went dark. Kate and her security teams burst into the storage bay moments later. They found Jake standing over Zarkoth's unconscious body. The commander was bleeding from multiple plasma burns and various cuts. He swayed on his feet, but remained upright. Medical teams for both of us, Jake said calmly. And containment protocols for the prisoner. I want him secured in the highest security cell we have. Greg Palmer arrived with medical teams. He took one look at Jake's injuries and shook his head. You have second-degree burns, a concussion, a fractured rib, and severe tissue damage. You should be in shock. You should be unconscious. How are you even standing? Practice, Jake said, then finally allowed himself to collapse. Both Jake and Zarkoth were taken to the medical center. They were treated in separate rooms under armed guard. Jake's injuries were severe, but Greg had seen worse during the war. Humans had remarkable healing capabilities. With proper treatment, Jake would recover completely. Zarkoth woke in a secured medical room. His broken fingers had been set, his injuries bandaged, but he was restrained to the bed, unable to move. Kate Stevens sat in a chair nearby, watching him. You're going to tell us who hired you, Kate said. You're going to tell us everything. Zarkoth considered refusing. But what was the point? He had failed. His career was over. The Galactic Assassins Guild would mark him as compromised. Other assassins might even come after him to protect their collective reputation. It was a human corporation, Zarkoth said quietly. Morrison Industrial Systems. They wanted control of this colony's mining operations. They hired me to eliminate Commander Morrison so they could install their own administrator. Kate recorded the confession. Why did you keep trying after the first attempt failed? I thought humans were weak, Zarkoth said. Everyone says you're a young species, fragile and inexperienced. I didn't understand until it was too late. Understand what? That you don't quit. That you refuse to die. That you evolved on a world so dangerous that only the most stubborn creatures survived. Zarkoth looked at her with all three eyes. Every warning I received told me to flee. I should have listened. 3 days later, Jake was released from medical care. His injuries were healing faster than Greg predicted. Kate met him outside the medical center. Zarkoth gave us everything, Kate said. Names, accounts, communication logs. The corporation that hired him is being investigated. We've also sent his testimony to the Galactic Law Enforcement. They're very interested in his information about other contracts. Maybe Gasing, close mark. And the assassin? Jake asked. He'll be deported to his homeworld to face charges. The Velkari government is not happy that one of their citizens tried to kill a human. They're worried about diplomatic repercussions. 23. 23. 23. Jake nodded. Before he leaves, I want to speak with him. Kate arranged the meeting. Jake entered Zarkoth's cell alone. The assassin looked at him with something close to respect. Those warnings you received, Jake said, they weren't from us. They were from other species who learned the hard way what happens when you threaten humans. I understand now, Zarkoth said. Humans are pursuit predators. You evolved chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. You never learned to give up because giving up meant starvation. You brought that instinct to the stars. We're not special, Jake said. We're just stubborn. We heal from injuries that kill other species because our bodies evolved to handle trauma. We fight through pain because our ancestors had to. We work in teams because cooperation kept us alive. None of that makes us better than anyone else. It just makes us different. Different enough to survive anything, Zarkoth said. The galaxy learned that during your wars. I learned it too late. Jake turned to leave, then paused. If I could give you advice, find a new profession. One that doesn't involve trying to kill humans. After Zarkoth was deported, his testimony spread through the galactic criminal networks. Assassins across the stars received the same message. Humans are off limits, not because of laws or treaties, but because hunting a human is suicide. On New Austin, life returned to normal. Jake resumed his duties, managing the colony. Kate, Ben, and Amy went back to their regular work. The colonists continued mining, farming, and building their new home. And across the galaxy, humanity's reputation grew stronger. The species that refused to die, that never quit, that turned every hunter into prey. The species that evolution had forged in Earth's harsh crucible, making them survivors above all else. They never learned how to be prey. They only knew how to endure, adapt, and win.